We are coming in hot, folks. Wednesday, Matt, Reap the Harvest in the Zone. Today, we're going to touch on some topics of the division that's going on. I mean, it's time to come together. I don't know. You know, I'm a pretty funny guy. I'm like, hey, why can't we just listen to Beatles come together and everything's fixed? But in reality, that just doesn't work all the time. Yeah. So we're going to kick in the intro and we'll be right back. So funky, so fresh. It doesn't get any bigger or better than the Matt Tack podcast here at Reap the Harvest Live. I'll tell you what, if you guys could see my dance move, you'd would be here every week with us. So anyway, wild stuff going on in the world, And how do we find common ground as humans on this planet? Where do we find the even playing field here where we can move forward successfully together? You know, I think that some people are always hoping stuff will blow over. And it's just at a point where it can't, you know, certain things need to be fixed. I get that. And you know, it's like we talked about that one time. You know, it's easier, I think, for me to say, oh man, I wish it just blow over or whatever, because you know, my perspective is different because I don't have to deal with certain things. So it makes it easier for me to be like, oh well, you know, I better not say anything, or I better just do this. And that's, I'm willing to admit that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that admitting certain things is part of the way to move forward, because, you know, I live my life in a way that I'm kind of bulletproof in a lot of ways, because I'm willing to admit when I'm right or when I'm wrong, or I'm willing to admit this or that, or I live in a way I get along with all kinds of different people. I work professionally with all kinds of different people from different backgrounds, different areas of the world, all kinds of stuff. Not everybody's like that. I've lived in tons of different areas of the country too. You know, I'm from St. Louis, but I lived in Phoenix. I lived in Vegas. I lived in San Diego. Now I live in North Dallas. I mean, traveled all over the country, traveled all over the world with people. And so I think that I was exposed to a lot of stuff that, you know, regular people aren't exposed to, because I chose to pursue those situations. And now, you know, there's a lot going on. So that's what you wanted to talk about today. So, you know me, I always throw my 2 cents in and then kind of let Matt hit the ball out of the park.
Yeah, well, no, stay in here. Let's talk about this, because I think and this is obviously coming from a white man's tongue. So you got to.
Well, that's what I meant when I said what I said too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, putting things in perspective, you know, it really comes down to educating yourself, obviously acknowledgement, and then educating yourself. Everything is hinged on education, right? And what's wild to see is, I mean, it took how many years for just slavery to be implemented into our educational systems, right? We couldn't even talk about slavery until I think it was like 50 or 60 years ago. It wasn't even that long ago, and those who forget history are destined to repeat it. And it wasn't even in our history books where we were educating people on the atrocities within slavery. And the other thing is, and I wanted a young woman to come on board. Her name's Helen Wong. She actually does, she leads an effort in Washington, D.C. on human trafficking. That's a major, major, major issue worldwide, right? And we're sitting in the midst of a racial battle, that the reality is, and I would encourage everyone to go watch this full feature on Netflix. It's called 13th. And it'll give you,
I saw your wife post about that the other day.
Yeah, it'll give you a real feature of why things are hinged the way they are today, right? And I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and just researching and educating and reflecting in this area, because I know I need to educate myself, right? Before I can verbalize or articulate anything, I need to know, why is it the way it is? Because again, this is coming from a white man's tongue. Like, I need to educate and I need to acknowledge myself. And we were going to bring on, actually, I was going to bring on my boy, Josh. He goes to my church, and he's really been an advocate. And he's just a really standout Black guy. And he has taken approach on of really standing up and kind of defending the Black race, and really understanding, like, hey, this is the mindset of where I'm coming from as a Black man. And he's just gotten beat up. And so he just needed a reprieve from that for a little while, and fully understand that, because it's not up for the Black man to educate me. It's up for me just to get educated. Right. And that's what I've been doing, is really through the 13th. It's eye-opening. It's absolutely eye-opening on the atrocities that occurred and that still occur, right? Pre and post slavery, where it's not necessarily post anti-slavery. Is essentially there was an element in the 13th that you'll see that it was still just organized. It was organized slavery at that point, where they basically would lock people up, and they would force them to do things. Kids doing essentially, they were just like, they were indentured servants still. It was crazy. And so it just really gave me an outlook on what that looks like. And
what year was it based in? Because again, I haven't watched it yet. So is it like a documentary, or is it like based on a
documentary that phases? So it phases everything from, obviously slavery to the abolishment of slavery.
Got it.
Then it even takes it even a step further, where they basically, when the abolishment of slavery occurred, they then made they just, like, there was no repercussions for basically locking somebody up. And locking somebody up, meaning putting them in handcuffs and essentially taking them in. You are doing what I'm telling you to do. And it could be for, like, a Black man sitting in the wrong seat. Hey, I'm arresting you for this, or whatever it might be. Right.
Yeah.
And so then there was just mass incarceration that started happening. So instead of it being slavery, right, or indentured servanthood, it then turned into mass incarceration, which then accelerated through different presidential campaigns, and it became more publicly known, where, hey, I'm taking an agenda, and it's more a street-based agenda, where I'm going to like put crime at a higher level. So politically, it never was exposed because it was called, like, the war on drugs or whatever it might be. But what they were specifically doing is targeting Black neighborhoods, right?
Right. The crime bill, the early 90s.
So, and honestly, Bill Clinton was a major factor in that. And when, like, the 90s, there was an insane trajectory in mass incarceration. So, and the key code word was, hey, the war on drugs. It was always the war on drugs. Really, it was a war on, war on a minority, right? The marginalized. And it's just really eye-opening to see, right? To see that's the reason of why we are today. And then we're going to sit here and say that, hey, what's a worse knee, right? Like, if you think that Colin Kaepernick's knee is worse than that knee in George Floyd's neck, you are out of your freaking mind. Like, if you're going to protest, like, the National Football League because of their stance maybe on Colin Kaepernick, or lack of stance on Colin Kaepernick, you're out of your mind, because George Floyd gave a very, very strong visualization of, like, the way Black males have been treated regardless. And, you might come to the argument that, like, okay, this is turning against cops. It's not turning against cops, because there's a lot of good, and there's always a few bad apples, right? But a few bad apples, this is the way cops are trained, right? And it goes back right now to education. And it's like, how are we educated? Number one.
I think it was essential that you said it's how they're trained, because I looked into that case specifically. Like I said, that case, the legal repercussions that will come to that cop, that officer, what's his name from Minneapolis, whatever his name is. I try not to remember those people's names. If that might be
I try
crazy,
not to either. It's not a good name.
That what he did, I believe, was part of the training. Therefore, he might be backed legally for doing that. And since and again, I'm not a lawyer, but this was a lawyer's post, a guy who I know who's very, very intelligent, how he broke down the case, like I said, against the police officer. What they're trying to get him accused of, I believe, is second-degree murder, which would mean, I think that it would have to be, and again, I'm not a lawyer here, but there would have to be intent to kill. And since he used something that was in the training, and there may not have been intent to kill, it killed him, he might have a case to get off, which is sorry, Mom Attack, but that's effed up. And so, when you break down the legalities of this whole thing, how do you charge these guys? You know what I mean? It's a slippery grip there. I don't like it. It stinks to me. So when we look at the situation and we look at how the legal breakdown works, I don't know how that's going to play out. And I fear that he might not get what, many of us, myself included, think he should get, as far as going to jail for murder. Plain and simple.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't know anybody that doesn't think that that's what should happen.
No,
haven't met anybody yet.
No, because there's 100%. But like, number one, the human element comes into play. It's like, at what point, like, throughout that entire thing. And I had to watch it because, number one, that like is educating me, right?
Yeah, I went back and watched it a few times, even recently.
The reason why I think that's important, because a lot of these people that like have their conscience is telling them that is not to go with Black Lives Matter, is to go against that. Hey, like, and I've been with these people. Some of these people, like I was with a guy the other day, and he just goes straight political with it, where, hey, I'm conservative and this is the way that I believe on it. And he doesn't go full circle as far as understand the human element to all of this, right?
That's the tough thing about this, is it gets very politically charged quickly.
Super, super politically charged, like, and exploited by the media as like it's definitely, it's black and white, and you cannot see the other side if you're conservative. And I'm like, dude, why is that the case? Why is this so politically charged that you can't see that George Floyd, you don't need to humanize him, right? He is a human. Like, and at what point where you put a knee in somebody's neck for 9 minutes, of course he's going to be struggle to breathe, and you put a knee in somebody's neck for 9 minutes while you're on his diaphragm, right? You're like covering his entire body.
It's an ugly video.
3 men,
terrible.
Like, it doesn't take 3 men to seize another man, especially when there's been no like the forced retaliation. And so, like, I think of it as more so of the human element in George Floyd's case, and the human element in every other case, right, is that he's a human. You don't have to try to humanize this scenario. There was no reason why that should have ever occurred, right? And there's no reason why there's laws passed in place for mass incarceration, right? There's no reason why this has been perpetrated the way it is. Like, people made these decisions very specifically, and they did it for a political agenda. And that's horrible, right? And as you educate yourself, like, how are the next 30 years going to be the best 30 years, right?
That's how I always try to look at it.
But you also have to understand the past to be better to get better in the future.
Totally agree.
that's just where, you know, I'm at with really getting educated myself and kind of coming full circle and being that bridge, right, of understanding. I think, you know, a lot of times it's, you know, I'm going to pull out some bullet points as far as some of the things that I've really kind of come to terms with as my education. Number one, I think it's mentorship. And I don't think it's just mentorship for like a white man, because that can be more interpreted as like a saviorism. And my wife used that word, where like I'm the white man coming to get the kid out of the ghetto, right? That's not, I think, what it needs to be. Like, you need to come full circle with yourself, where you're educating that, and then finding maybe somebody of minority status or somebody that's been marginalized. And if you have an opportunity to breathe life into that situation and pull that out and give him other opportunities, do so. So mentorship is a key ingredient to exposing something that of like great wealth for somebody that is of a minority status or marginalized, right? And that doesn't include race. So like race or color. So I have a brother-in-law. My brother-in-law, yeah, like I said, man, I talk about him a lot. Charles is awesome. So Charles is not only black, but he's gay, right? And we talk
you've
about
said that before on here.
And this is even something to him that has really kind of like beaten him down to an extent, because he's like constantly trying to like defend himself, he feels like, in many cases. But the one thing, and I'm family, so I get a little bit more insight to him, and we can kind of come together, because I love him. I genuinely love him. And I know he loves my brother. And so I highly respect him. He is a very successful black man. And I was like, at what point does it come down to where it's like acknowledgement or education of the white man, and then finding that opportunity? But then it's also on that one, that black man, right? That's like, dude, I made it. Like I'm like what in the world's eyes considered me successful. How now then can I create opportunities for 4 more? That are growing up just like me, or how can I identify that? So that's how you create mass spread of like opportunity, right? For a minority status or like marginalized, is creating a network, right? Where and the one network that I used is and I truly believe change a life. I chose Big Brother Big Sister. So I went into that organization. I didn't ask for anybody into particular based on skin color. So it could be white, black, or Hispanic. That's predominantly what's in Tampa, Florida. That's where I'm located. So like it didn't have to be, but I just, God intervened right in that situation. I have an awesome young man that I have the ability to mentor, and then, potentially give an opportunity to, because I am an entrepreneur and want to teach him actually real estate, but I always encourage him. Right. And I'm trying to create opportunities. And right now we're actually going through, something where he's actually might be given a scholarship if he goes to a state school. So we're going to be going through some of the paperwork and some of the various things.
That's cool.
Aiding him in that is helping him, right? That's helping him like go to secondary education. That's just one way I've utilized that as an outlet. And then also being with my wife, educating myself on Be the Bridge, and how I can be the bridge in that scenario. Of the racial divide, the racial gap, right? And treating that very respectfully. So it's mentorship, right? Then the other thing is like creating opportunities. The other, if you're an entrepreneur, or you have an employment opportunities, which we have something coming up, I'm looking at that, right? I'm looking at the opportunities where we can hire somebody of minority status, and that then creates another opportunity where they can maybe get out of a situation where they were only making a finite amount, where they can make accelerated amount in real estate. Real estate's just that vehicle that you can make good chunks of money, right? People need to know that. And so I'm a true believer, whether people believe it or not, I'm a true believer in affirmative action, because if you look back in history, hey man, like look what happened. And affirmative action is actually creating equality, and equality is good across the board. So there shouldn't be like a harder struggle for somebody. There should be more opportunities created within our educational system that allow people to grow. So, I mean, it's all going to be through everything is hinged back to education. It's the way cops are trained, right? That's education. Everything is hinged back to where, hey,
well, that's definitely got to be fixed. Everyone agrees on that too.
Yeah, I just like, for me, and I know that I'm getting a little bit of backlash from this from people and then from people online. I don't agree that like there should be like people-led law and order, right? So I don't believe you should
be a train wreck.
So police officers, and then it's more volunteer based. I know people have come up with clever ideas that the policing system is the way it is. That's just not. I do believe that there needs to be law and order, but everything is hinged on education, right? So we're understanding the atrocities that are occurring. How can we then we can then improvise right now and create levels of education, whether it be like harsher screenings for cops, because that definitely needs to happen, and then overall, okay, how do we restrain? How are we, considered public servants above all, right? How do we consider George Floyd? I'm serving him, at the end of the day. How can I serve him? How can I serve others? That's just a major piece of how we can serve. And, it was one of those things where that was never the case, right? I'm not serving that individual.
Right.
And that's really, I think, what needs to come into play. If I'm a police officer, how am I a public servant above all? Where I am, protecting those around me. He wasn't protecting anyone. George Floyd wasn't going after anyone. It was like a very small crime at the end of the day. And we need to take that into context, right?
Right.
So I know they're still looking into that. So that's, well,
that particular instance on his record was a small crime. Yes.
Very, very small. So, it was just a couple quick bullet points that I had just thought. I thought of just as I was like educating myself. I listened to a couple podcasts, and I definitely have a lot more education and training to go in this area. But it's ongoing, right? Learning is always ongoing. But the one thing that stood out to me as far as like how active change is made, it's number one, like how can you change the life of somebody else? How can I be of service to somebody with that server mentality? And albeit like I'm not a cop, so like the public service, that's, I think as a cop, like I can treat that, right, as I'm coming to work, like how can I be of service to my community, right? So I highly respect police officers, but I also know that there's a long way to go to minimize some of the things that are going on in this ordeal of mass incarceration, because it's still happening, right? We have like an insane amount of people. I think over 2 million people within we actually own, I believe, 25% of the world's incarceration. How mind-boggling.
Be surprised if it's higher than that.
So that's just insane considering how large some other countries are. I mean, you have China. Like, how is that even physically possible? It stems from the political agenda, what we got going on in mass incarceration.
And I mean, there's kickbacks for all of that stuff, and that's why if you follow my pages, I rip on it both sides, because there's kickbacks going to both sides that play into these narratives and that play into these agendas, and they're getting kickbacks, whether it's the stock market on this, or it's that, or it's privatized prisons, or any of this kind of stuff, or like you said, the crime bill, or any of these kinds of stuff. It's all politicized. I mean, there's an argument now going on that if you go to the BLM website, it sends you to voteblue.org, and that the Democrats are raising money using that BLM narrative and that website to send money to Democrat candidates. I mean, they can do whatever they want, but the problem is that if you point it out, you get name called for it. So I generally keep my mouth shut about this stuff. Like I said earlier, I always sometimes sit back and say, hey, maybe I should just let this all blow over. Maybe I shouldn't say anything about this. But like, at what point am I like, well, I don't like this and I don't like this, and it's left and right to me. For sure. It's conservatives and it's liberals. It's the radical left and the radical right. It's everybody. I told you earlier, I was reading, I read the conspiracy websites because I think they're funny.
Yeah.
I think it's all gotten so far out of hand. Where are we going to find common ground here as people, as we the people, instead of this finger pointing and name calling and this, that, and this is the other thing, and you're the problem and I'm not, and I can be this, but you can't. Sorry, but that's an issue. We're never going to get anywhere with this whole sixth grade, schoolyard beat up mentality. It's not going to work.
No, for sure. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, the privatized prisons. That's huge. I completely had that. ALEC, all those organizations that are actually funded politically, and that was another thing that was talked about in a couple of Tony Robbins podcasts that were really good. He brought some really good Black leaders together to just to have their voice to be heard, and that was just something that came up. And unless corporations, and then obviously with government, but big, large organizations stepping in on this to really vocalize their opinion in stance that, hey, something is going on, right? And this is what we need to do, create that momentum and create that change. It's an issue. And these privatized prisons, and how much revenue they generate. That's just like, it's mind-boggling.
It's a kickback system.
It's
no secret. I mean, you can look up, Pat Hilton's public record and, find whatever I've done wrong too. Right. Because it's out there somewhere. And, there's, that's why I stopped drinking alcohol because, I got pulled over with an alcohol charge, and that's big money too. In the state of California, they can charge you for, driving under the influence if you're not over the legal limit. Even if you haven't had alcohol, you could be tired from taking Benadryl and get arrested for driving under the influence of anything and have a 0.0. So, I mean, there's a lot of kickbacks going on in that system. And that's why I brought up the lawyer guy post, because that guy who I know thinks a lot of that is wrong. You're pulling somebody over that's tired, that maybe potentially took some Benadryl, and now they're getting charged with a driving under the influence charge.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Where do we draw the line with any of this stuff? Me, I was guilty. I'll just say it flat out. And if you follow me, I don't drink alcohol anymore because it's not worth it. Okay. So cool. I'm willing to admit when I'm right and when I'm wrong. Some people aren't willing to do that. I am. So I do think I learned through the process of that, because I'm going to tell you something. I got nailed, and I got nailed hard. There are other people who get caught in that system and they just never get out. It's like a hyperloop. Hyperloop, but they never get out. They end up homeless, alcoholics with no help, and nobody on their side. It's very sad. Yeah. Very sad.
Yeah, it is. But I do agree with that. But
I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, this is way bigger than just what we're seeing on TV or headlines. There is a whole 360-degree system here going on, and it affects everybody. It affects everybody. And it's hit me hard too. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't affect this person differently or more in this area than it does somebody else over in that area. We've noticed that that's true as well. But dude, you don't want to get caught in the claws of the gorilla, is what I call it now. The claws of the gorilla is the system, the establishment. Once it gets a hold of you, it wants to keep you there. And that's why we talk about this prison stuff and this and that and the other thing and the kickbacks and this and that and the other thing. Health insurance companies and all, they don't make money off you being healthy.
No.
Come on, dude. You're doing push-ups every morning. I'm out walking at 5 a.m. You can see it on my Instagram feed. Walking, doing yoga, drink my greens, take my vitamins. It's way cheaper for me to do that every month than it is to get sick. They don't make any money if Pat and Matt are healthy. So, I mean, this is a whole entire circle, okay,
for sure.
of 360 degrees. It just depends on what compartment we're attacking at any given moment of a chat.
Exactly. That's why the government, I used to live in Washington, D.C. I mean, that's why the government, these large corporations hire lobbyists, right?
Well,
that's why the major players in the entire world, if the tobacco industry is throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at lobbyists to go, to get their opinion heard, right? To get their bill passed. But at the end of the day, we're talking about race, right? We're talking about
race. But I did want to bring up the fact that there's a lot of these things I just mentioned that maybe I'm able to get out of in certain aspects and other people aren't.
Yeah, for sure. And I do want to bring this, and I kind of want to end on this. I can't believe it's the good thing we're talking about this. And I hope it impacts a lot of people because, going a little bit longer today, this is just part of the educational process, right? There's a lot of things that we can do. One of the things is like be the bridge. And so I'm going through this right now, and I'm just going through various readings. And obviously, I call myself a Christian, right? At the end of the day, I try to live by those measures and, a follower of Jesus at the end of the day. But I was reading this thing and I thought it was pretty good. And I'm going to share it now.
I think our country needs Jesus and God right now.
That's right. But so it's called Color Brave. And I was saying, so it says this, as Christians of differing ethnicities, we share a common heritage, a common memory. Consider these words from the Apostle Paul. In Christ Jesus, you are all children of God through faith. There is neither Jew nor Gentile. There's neither slave nor free, nor is there male or female. For you are all one in Christ Jesus. That was Galatians 3:26 and 28. This does not mean that we take a colorblind approach to community. Paul wasn't suggesting that aspects of our gender or racial identity aren't important, that we should all meld together into one indistinguishable throng. In fact, Paul emphasized that unity can be found in diversity. We all have been given different gifts. We all are different parts of the same body. In the love of the family of God, we must become color brave, color caring, color honoring, and color blind, and not colorblind. We have to recognize the image of God in one another. We have to love despite, even because of our differences. I believe that the real beauty can come from the ashes of our country's history with racism. But the family of God must first acknowledge the ashes. Without looking back, without understanding the truth of our country's history, it's difficult to move forward in healthy ways. Truth frees us to grow, frees us to see, frees us to be aware, frees us from the bondage of racial sin, frees us to have courage for difficult conversations. Trust is the foundation of awareness, and awareness is the first step in the process of reconciliation. As Jesus told us, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. That was John 8:32. Lord, I cry out, my God and my Redeemer, as the only one who can save me from myself. Show me my blind spots, helping me to see the truth, even when it is uncomfortable. I want to know the truth that will set me free. I hope that's your vision today. I hope that you see that vision in your life. And that was just extremely powerful to me. Color brave has been embedded in my mind that we need to see.
Maddie's just out here preaching the word of the Lord. I love it.
Yeah, man.
I love it. I think that's something that should be focused on more. I know everybody's got their own opinions, and I respect that totally. Yeah, I know people sway one way or the other. I respect that. It depends on the issue for me. But I think that we can all agree that having a little faith, not only in each other, but in the fact that a greater good will come in the future, is something that maybe we as a nation should come together on. That's just my opinion. Obviously, that might be a little hippy dippy or a little, wishy-washy to some people, but man, I'm telling you that, a lack of a higher power in our society, in my opinion, is hurting us right now with the way that we communicate with each other.
John Maxwell, I think, put it best. He said, the greatest leaders are able to lead when the head and the heart align, right?
Mm.
If you aren't leading with your heart and it doesn't align with your head, a lot of times, when we make decisions just based out of thinking out of our own interest, cynical thinking. But when you can align your head and your heart and really know what's the right choice, what's the right decision, that's when your head and your heart are aligning and allow you to move forward. So
we always find a way to bring good old John Max. If that guy doesn't come on this show sometime, John Maxwell, with all the times we reference your greatness, I'm telling you, then you're selling us out.
Follow me at Official Matt Tech on IG. Here we are at Reap the Harvest, just trying to add value into your day.
We love you. Have a great day.